Thanks for being here today. I appreciate all of you decided to come out to service and carve out some of your time to be here. I know we say that every single week, but every single week, I really mean it. Thank you for being here. Thank you that we get together and just sing together and all that good stuff. If you are watching online, I want to welcome you as well. You kind of missed out on some great stuff already, but glad to have you tuned in anyway. And thank you so much for staying up to date with everything that God is doing here through the interwebs. So, we are in the middle of a series called Choices, and in case you are new here or just haven't been here for a while, the reason that we're talking about this is because you and I make thousands of choices every single day. Thousands and thousands of choices and decisions, from what to wear, what to eat, when to go to bed, how many episodes we're going to watch on Netflix before we go to sleep. Thousands of choices every single day. And sometimes those choices are trivial, sometimes they don't really matter in the grand scheme of things. But there are choices that every single one of us make. There are choices that we face regularly, almost daily, that reflect our character, that reflect our values, that reveal what we're about and reveal the value that we have in certain relationships. And there are some choices that we make that affect our lives way more than what it just seems like on the surface. And so what we're doing throughout the month of November is we are taking a look at these different choices that every single one of us have to face. Every single one of us have to make a decision about these things. And what we're doing is we're just talking through the implications of both sides of the choice. Here's what happens if we make this choice. Here's what happens if we make this choice. What are we going to do with that? Now, if you weren't here last week or haven't had a chance to watch the message online, Kevin, our lead pastor, talked about a choice that every single one of us face. And I just want to quickly do a 1-minute recap because it's going to lead into what we're going to talk about today. So last week, Kevin talked about a choice that we make in a lot of different areas of life, but he specifically challenged us in regards to our relationships. And the choice was, are we going to do what's easy or what's beneficial? Are you and I in our relationships going to do what's easy, just what feels good, or are we going to do what's beneficial for the other person? And the challenge was in our marriages, in our friendships, and with our children. If we see a character flaw, if we see a defect, if we see a blind spot, if there's something that's harmful to another person that we love and care about, it can be difficult to bring it up. It can be hard to have that conversation. It might cause conflict. But the choice that you and I have to make is, are we going to do what's easy or what's beneficial? Do we care enough about the other person? Do we love the other person enough to speak the truth in love, but share the truth because we know it's going to be beneficial for them? And so that was the challenge last week. Now, I don't know if you tried that on for size this past week. Hopefully you did. Hopefully you didn't have a big domestic over it. But last week, some of you got that a little late. That's all right. Last week, the choice was on the side of the one giving the information. The choice was, are we going to do what's easy or beneficial if we're giving the information? This week, what I want to do is I want to talk about the flip side of that. What do you and I do if we're the ones receiving the information? What do we do on our end if somebody tells us the truth, in love or not in love? If somebody shares something hard with us, if somebody critiques us, criticizes us, gives us advice, what choice do we make? Because just like there's a choice on the giving end, there is a choice on the receiving end as well. An equally important and maybe even more important choice that every single one of us have to deal with. Every single one of us have to face the fact of this choice because we will choose one of two directions. I want you to think about in your life the last time somebody criticized you, maybe judged you felt like, offered you some advice, tried to correct you. Maybe it was this last week after last week's message. Maybe it was from a spouse, a boss, a friend, a neighbor, doesn't matter who. But think about in your life the last time that you felt like, oh, that's something I don't want to hear. Ooh, that kind of stung a little bit. Ooh, that was a little bit of correction. And just like the first week, I want to show you a chart of words, and I want you to think about which side more reflects you. So the last time that you felt criticized or maybe even cut down or something kind of hurt that somebody said, which one of these two words was more your reaction? Did you defend yourself? Or did you admit that maybe there was something to what they were saying? Your just kind of initial gut reaction. Did you get all defensive and no, I didn't? Oh, I would never. Or how can you accuse me of that? Did we get defensive? Or were we more likely to admit that, you know what, maybe there's something there. Maybe there is an issue I should look at. If you're having trouble deciding which one of these two you fall into, like, man, I don't really know what I did. Just ask the person sitting next to you. They'll know. They're going to know right away which camp you fall into more likely than not. The last time you were criticized or corrected, which one? Here's another set of words. Were you more likely to justify your actions? Or were you more likely to accept what the other person was saying? I think for all of us, myself included, man, we can go here pretty easily, can't we? Well, you don't understand what they did to me. Well, you don't understand what I had to go through. You don't understand the stress of my life. And we just instantly go to justifying. Anytime we feel something that's critical or judgmental or like, I don't want to hear that. Or maybe for you, did you accept that what they were saying, maybe there's a blind spot in my life that I can't see. I'm going to take what they're saying because maybe they love me, maybe they don't. Maybe they see something that I can't. Here's one more for you. Did you attack them or did you appreciate them? Because I think that's a telltale sign. I mean, when somebody tried to give you some advice, say, hey, I think you should do it this way, or I see something in your life that isn't good, did your mind immediately start racing towards, yeah, well, I remember the last thing you did and you aren't perfect either. Let me cut you down. I'm going to shove it back in your face. Or did you appreciate the courage that it took to tell you something from their part that was maybe hard, that was difficult, that they didn't want to say because they knew it might be bad? Like, which side of the list more reflects your reactions when this comes up? And I'm not talking about on the outside, because I think on the outside, we're Minnesota nice, right? And we can do this on the outside. But which side more reflects your heart? Which side is more indicative of what goes on the inside when you feel criticized, corrected, when there's advice you don't want to hear, when someone says you've got a problem, when someone critiques the way you do something? Because here's what I know is true for all of us. We all are going to face this over and over and over again. We've all dealt with this in the past. We're all going to deal with it in the future. When we hear opinions or advice or information or a hard truth and it gets under our skin, right? It makes us feel irritated. It hurts. We all have a choice in that moment with how we're going to respond. When you and when somebody tells us the truth, when somebody criticizes us, this is the choice that we have to make. Are we going to go or are we going to grow? Are we going to go or are we going to grow? Because we have to make a choice one way or the other. Now, I do want to add a disclaimer here because not every relationship that we face fits nice and neatly into a box. There are a small percentage of times where if you are in an abusive relationship, go is the only option, okay? I'm not saying that's not true. Just forget the rest of it. If you are dealing with a spouse who is either physically or emotionally abusing you or manipulating you, go is the option and go quickly. Now, maybe that's separation, maybe that's counseling. I don't know what it is. But go. You need to get out of that situation. If you are dealing with a boss who's asking you to do something illegal, you need to go. There are times when this is the only option. But I say that as a disclaimer because 98% of the time, I made up that statistic, 98% of the time, the situations that you and I are going to face, we have to choose between the two. And here's the thing, we can only choose one. You can never get both of these at the same time. And I think when I look at our culture as a whole, when I look at America in 2019, I think we choose go way, way, way more often, right? We are so quick and so easy to get offended in today's culture. It's like our first reaction, even in the middle of when somebody's trying to tell us something that we feel maybe could get harmful or hurtful or, dig at our ego a little bit. We just immediately, we go. If your boss says something you don't like, you go, you find a new job, you go. If your spouse says something you don't like, you go find a new spouse. We get out of there. If your coach for your little kids isn't putting them on the field long enough, well, then we go and we find another team where they get enough play time. If your friend doesn't like something that you say, we'll just block you on Facebook, right? And we go find new friends. And if a church doesn't, affirm everything that you want to believe and run the programs that you have and paint the colors, that you like and sing the songs that you want, then we just go and find another church, right? Not that I've had any experience with that one. But here's the deal. I know that sounds extreme. You might be thinking, no, that's not what I do. That's not what I do. But the principle is true in every scenario, whether it's extreme, whether it's small, the principle is true that you and I are way more likely to go than grow. Now, maybe you don't go run out and get a new job every time your boss says something that you don't like. But when they do, don't we go on the inside? Isn't it easy for us to just check out? If your boss is critical, and we just, I'm not going to listen to them anymore. They don't know what they're talking about. And we check out, we remove ourselves relationally. If there's a coworker that we don't like who's maybe said something, we just don't deal with them anymore. Well, I'm not going to work with that person because I don't like what they have to say or I don't like this. And we pull away in relationships, and we might not go physically, but mentally, emotionally with other people. We revert, we hide back to ourselves because it hurts, doesn't it? I'm not saying there's not good reason. It hurts. It's difficult to hear those things. And because it's difficult, we go. We like to run. We don't want to face the conflict. We don't want to face the music. We don't have to deal with this situation. So we choose to go. I think for most of us, if you are married, I think our spouses have tried to be honest and help us before. Now, maybe when your spouse tries to give you some advice or some correction, maybe the delivery's terrible, okay? I'll give you that. Maybe it was not in love. Maybe there was anger. Maybe you felt like it was nitpicking. Maybe they were making a big deal over nothing. But I believe that every single one of us, if we're married, our spouse has tried to help us before. Our spouse has tried to do what's beneficial. They see things differently than we do. But what happens so often? We go, don't we? You might not go get a new spouse, but we go in our minds. We check out emotionally. We check out intimately. We give the silent treatment. That's my specialty right there. I wrote the book on it. We go, don't we? Because I don't want to hear that. That's hard. That's uncomfortable. If I agree with you, then I got to do something about it, and that just feels bad. We don't like conflict. We don't like criticism. We don't like feeling judged. We don't like feeling corrected, and so we choose go, don't we? Have you ever had a friend try to tell you how you should spend your money? That's fun to hear, isn't it? Here's a better one. Have you ever had a friend tell you how you should parent your kids? That's a surefire way to lose a friend, isn't it? Why? You laugh because we know. We go, don't we? We don't want to hear that. We don't agree. It feels abrasive. It doesn't feel comfortable. And so what do? Our natural tendency, what is most easy for us, what is most tempting for us, is in situations of conflict, criticism, correction, advice, judgment, whatever it might be. We go here. We go. I want to avoid the conflict. It's uncomfortable. It's unbearable. I don't want to deal with it. So I'm just going to choose to go. But what we miss, what we don't understand in the moment, what we can't see further down the line is that every time we make a choice to go, whether it's conscious or subconscious, when we choose go, we are actively making a choice not to grow. Every time we choose the first, it means by default, we don't choose the second. Solomon is considered one of the wisest men to ever live. He was king of Israel for a few decades. Even to this day, even people who aren't Christians consider Solomon to be incredibly wise. And he talks about this in one of his Proverbs. Look at what he says. He says, if you reject discipline, you only harm yourself. But if you listen to correction, you grow in understanding. Solomon lays it out so clear. Two very different options with two very different outcomes. And even almost 3,000 years ago, where culture was different, where the internet didn't exist, culture was totally different. Yet as human beings, we are all faced with the same choice. Go or grow. Go or grow. In the face of conflict, in the face of correction, in the face of discipline, go or grow. When you and I reject discipline, when we ignore correction, when we just don't want to hear something, we get hurt in the process. And maybe not physically, I'll give you that, but developmentally, we're hurt. Relationally, we are harmed because of it. We put a wall up, we barricade ourselves from ever being able to grow. If we just turn off, get offended, go the other way, take our ball and go home, we prohibit ourselves from ever being able to grow. I think none of us, nobody watching online, none of us would admit that we're perfect, are we? None of us are perfect. Now, you may be better than the person sitting next to you. You may be better than the people you work with. You may be better than all your friends. I get that. But we would all admit we're not perfect, right? What if the correction is something that's actually true? What if the advice that somebody's giving us could actually be something that we need to hear? I know it's going to hurt. I know it's not going to feel good. Conflict is never fun. But what if people around us can see something that we can't? What if there are blind spots in our lives that we're totally unaware of? Maybe we do have an anger issue. Maybe we do have an addiction issue. Maybe we do have a spending issue. Maybe we do have a better way to teach and train our kids. Maybe our marriage does need some work. Maybe there are some blind spots and areas in our lives that we are unaware of. But if we reject what other people say, if we just turn off, if our first reaction is, no, I don't want to deal with that, I'm going to run the other way, we will never grow because of it. And if there are blind spots in your life, don't you want to be better? Don't you want to be, take out the fact that it's going to be difficult, but wouldn't you want to get better if you knew there was something in your life that was harming you or harming people around you? I think we all would. We all want to get better. But there's even another layer to this, because I think sometimes we justify our going, our leaving, our getting offended, our running away. We justify it because we say, well, that criticism was unjust. They're not right. They don't know what they're talking about. They have no idea what I go through. That's a total lie. I'm not going to believe what they say. They don't understand. Yet there is still a benefit, like Solomon says, if we listen to correction, there is still a benefit for our lives, even if we don't deserve what the other people are saying, even if it's wrong. Because when you and I choose to listen, when we choose to not run, when we choose to work through things, we develop as people. There's no way around it. We simply develop. We become more mature. We learn how to deal with our emotions better. We learn how to have more self-control. We learn how to manage conflict in a healthy way. If we choose grow instead of go, we are better because of it. You know what? We develop more patience when we choose grow instead of go. How else do we develop patience? How are you going to develop patience if you're always running and being offended at everything everyone says? We learn, we develop, we grow, we become more patient when we learn to stay, face the music, even if the song is bad, when we learn to face the music. How are you and I going to learn to evaluate other ideas and opinions? How are we going to learn to tolerate different types of thoughts if we're always running? Now, maybe we can learn something new that we never thought of, or maybe we can be more firm in what we already believed before. But there's no foundation for growth. There's no true understanding if we're just running from one problem to another problem to another problem. How are you and I going to learn to have productive or even just baseline respectful relationships with people who are different than us if we're always running from people who are different than us? Solomon said, if we listen to correction, we grow. And here's the thing. It doesn't mean that everything gets fixed. It doesn't mean that the situation is suddenly rosy. It doesn't mean that we have to be best friends with whoever's giving us, the truth in love or the criticism. It doesn't mean that we have to agree with everything they say. Everything on the outside might stay the same, might not change at all. But you know what will change? We will change. We will change on the inside when we choose to listen, to stay, to deal with conflict, to figure out how to do this relationship thing instead of just run at the first sign of trouble. You and I will be better because of it. I've had to face this choice a lot in my life, more times than I can probably remember. But the most recent time I can think of was just about a month ago, and I asked if I could share this story. It was with Marcia Swenson. Some of you know who she is. About a month ago, Marcia came up to me and just asked if we could just chat for a few minutes. She wanted to share some things that were on our hearts. I said, yeah, sure, let's do that. And we sat right over there. There were 2 tall chairs at that table. And she just began to tell me some things that were on her heart. And Marcia told me in a way that only Marcia can, with kindness and all that, she told me how she felt like I didn't care about her. From her perspective, she felt like I didn't care about her. And she felt like I didn't value her. She felt like I didn't have time for her and that I would just ignore her every Sunday. And as I was listening to her, it was so hard for me to hear, but she just began to spill her guts about everything she was feeling. And she told me she'd been thinking this for a long time, but she was so convinced in her heart, she was so convinced that I didn't care, that she kept it in until she just finally couldn't anymore. And it was so uncomfortable to sit at that table and listen to it. But not because she was angry, not because she was condemning. Marcia was saying over and over again, Shaheen, I love you so much. Shaheen, I love this church so much. Marcia has so many talents and gifts, and she is one of the best positive influences for what God is doing here at this church. But from her perspective, she was telling me in many different ways, but that I just didn't value what she brought to the table. And I sat there and it was uncomfortable and it was uneasy. And everything inside me just wanted to go. It was so hard, but I was faced with the choice. Am I going to go or am I going to grow? Am I going to go or am I going to grow? Because I could easily just defend myself. Well, Marcia, you don't know what's going on. Well, Marcia, that's not really what you think. Or Marcia, I know that you might feel that's not the true sort of thing. And I was faced with this inner turmoil. I was embarrassed. I was ashamed that she had felt that way. I could sense the hurt in her voice as she was talking, and that made me hurt inside, like, oh my gosh, what did I do for so long that caused her to feel like this? Now, not because I am anything special, because I am not, but for some reason I chose, you know what? I'm not going to defend myself. I'm going to listen to what she has to say, because maybe she can see something that I can't see. And I was unaware of a character flaw in me, a character defect in me that was causing pain for somebody else. And I was so happy later on that Marcia told me, but she told me and she brought it up to me, and I can't imagine how difficult it was for her. But she did what was beneficial for me, and she brought it up to me, and we ended up having a good conversation about this. I think I learned some things about her that I never knew before, and she learned about me that I'm a weird introvert who struggles with relationships. So, But here's the thing. I wanted to go so bad. I wanted to just defend myself. I wanted to say, no, that's not how it is, because here's the truth. And we got to this later on, but I told Marcia, I love you, Marcia. I care about you. I value you. But her perception was her reality. Her perception was her reality, and it highlighted an issue in my life that I needed to work on. And I am not there yet. I have not figured it out. I'm not even close. Okay? God still has a long way to work on me. But what Marcia did was she gave me an opportunity to grow. Because now every time I see Marcia, I instantly think, grow, grow, grow. There's something in your life that needs to be corrected. God used Marcia to highlight an area in my life to grow. And I just want to say, this is a good opportunity. If you have felt about me like Marcia felt about me, I'm sorry. That is not my heart. That is not who I want to be. I'm just weird, okay? I can talk to you about the Vikings. I can talk to you about the weather, or you can be in my close circle of like 5 to 6 close friends. But everywhere in between is uncomfortable. Like, I don't know how to have conversations. You probably think, because I get up here and talk, that I'm just this crazy extrovert. I'm not, man. I just want to hide, and like, that lobby freaks me out, man. I am so uncomfortable. If you felt that way, I'm so sorry. I am working on it with Marcia's help, with God's help. I'm trying to get better, but I am an imperfect person with a long way to grow. But, had I chosen this, God would have never been able to do this in me. And I'm not there yet, If you want to talk to me afterwards, I might just stand there and be awkward. But this is an opportunity for me to grow because I didn't go. And just like Solomon said, had I rejected what Marcia said, had I rejected that correction, had I rejected her perception, what she thought and what she saw in me, I would have only harmed myself and only harmed maybe many others as well. What would it look like in your life? What would it look like for you to choose grow instead of go? Practically speaking, what would it look like in your relationships, in the areas where you're facing conflict, in the relationships where somebody's criticized you, with people that you feel maybe they judge you or maybe they have something that hurts when they say it? What would it look like for you to grow instead of go? In your marriage? At your job? Maybe you're new here to this church because you chose to go from your last one. Or maybe you're one step away from leaving here because it's just uncomfortable. What would it look like to grow instead of go? What about with your extended family? Extended families always bring out the best around the holidays, don't they? Okay, I'll take that as a yes. You know, Thanksgiving and Christmas are coming up, and you're going to have to sit and have a conversation with Uncle Johnny and Aunt Susie, and they're going to tell you how to raise your kids, and you just think, maybe I'm not going to go to Christmas or Thanksgiving this year. Or maybe your parents are going to bring up that thing again. Whatever that thing is for you, you know what that thing is. Maybe it's just better just to go, but what would it look like instead of going, instead of running? What if we chose to grow? What if we chose to engage in that conversation? It's going to be hard, okay? I'm not trying to sugarcoat this at all. It is going to be hard. It is going to be difficult. It is going to be painful. It's going to be abrasive as we rub up against each other. Solomon also writes, as iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. It is going to hurt. But what if you could grow because of it? I don't know how the situation's going to end up. I don't know whether the relationship is going to be all hunky-dory afterwards. But what if you could grow? What if you could be more rounded, more healthy, more mature, deal with emotions better, deal with conflict better? What if you could be better? Wouldn't that be worth it? Wouldn't that be worth the pain? I know it's going to be painful, but wouldn't it be worth the pain if you and I could be better? The reason to choose grow instead of go is simply because it benefits us. Don't you want the best for your life? But there's one more part to this. There's one more element, one more why. If you are here today and you consider yourself a Christian, if you are watching online and you consider yourself a Christian, there is a deeper why for us. And the why for us is Jesus. Ultimately, the why to anything we do as followers of Christ is because of Jesus. And this choice that we make in conflict, this choice that we make when we feel abrasion and somebody says something that gets under our skin, the why is because of Jesus. Look at what Paul says in Colossians. He says, since God chose you to be the holy people he loves, since God wanted a relationship with you, since God sent his son Jesus to die for your sins, to redeem you, to make you in a right relationship with him, because God did that for you, here's how you should live in light of that. Clothe yourselves with tender-hearted mercy, with kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. Make allowance for each other's faults and forgive anyone who offends you. The reason that you and I ought to choose grow instead of go is because that's what God did for us. When Paul says, clothe yourselves with mercy, how are we going to show mercy to people if we're always running from people who need to be shown mercy? Mercy to people who deserve mercy isn't mercy. That's just called breathing. It's called being a human being. But it's when people don't deserve mercy that it counts for us as followers of Christ. Why? Because God, through Jesus, showed us mercy when we didn't deserve it. And shouldn't that, not it has to, but shouldn't that transform the way that we live and relate with others, even in the face of conflict, even in the face of criticism? Shouldn't we show mercy? Kindness You can be kind to people who are kind to you all day long. Who cares? It doesn't count for anything. But when you're kind to somebody who hurts you, when you're kind to somebody who judges you, man, that's where God works best through us, because it's a reflection of God's kindness that he showed to us. Humility. This is a good one. How are you going to be humble if you're always right? Answer, you can't be. Maybe we show humility by sticking it out and listening to what other people have to say, hearing other opinions and ideas, and what do you see that I don't see? Gentleness, patience, on and on. This is the best one. Make allowance for each other's faults and forgive anyone who offends you. America in 2019 says, if you offend me, I can shut you off, I can shut you down, I can leave the relationship, I can go, and I give myself permission and my own blessing to go. But in light of Jesus' forgiveness for us, shouldn't that transform the way that we extend forgiveness to one another? And I just think that the more time that we spend with God, the more that we experience his presence, the more the Holy Spirit guides and leads us, the more that we grow in our relationship with our Heavenly Father, the more that he will change us on the inside, and then what he does in us will produce a change out of us. And that change means that we show mercy, kindness, humility, gentleness, that we stay even in conflict. Why? Because it's the outcome of spending time with God. And look, my heart for all of us here today, Christian or not, my heart for all of us is that we would grow, that we would choose grow instead of go. But it's going to be hard. It will be so easy for us to go, to run, to flee, to not face the music, to not deal with the situation, to not have to work through the messiness of relationships. But I promise it will be more beneficial if we choose to grow, if we choose to stick it out, if we allow God to mature us through those relationships. You and I will be better if we make the choice to grow. So let me pray for you before we head out. Father, I just thank you so much that you love each and every one of us. You love us so much, God. That is why you sent your son, Jesus, to die for us. You showed us how, you stuck by our side when we didn't deserve it, when we couldn't earn it, when we were doing things that probably offended you. Father, because of what you've done for us, would you help us reciprocate that same sort of grace and mercy to people that we encounter? Father, would you help us to see the truth when people speak it to us? And even if it's not the truth, God, would you help us to develop as people? Would you develop in us patience, self-control, forgiveness, love, mercy, all those things? God, we don't want to be the same people that we are right now. We want to continue to grow and get better. So, Father, I pray that you would help us. We invite you, God, to help us be better people. Help us make the right choice, God. In your Son's name we pray. Amen.